Leo Vance adjusted the strap of his Vought issue messenger bag, the polyester digging into his shoulder as he navigated the lunchtime crush of 6th Avenue. He was 24, a junior content moderator for Vought International's Digital Safety Division, which was a polite way of saying he spent 10 hours a day scrubbing the internet of cell phone videos that showed superheroes accidentally crippling civilians. It was a good job. A safe job. It paid for his studio apartment in Queens and his subscription to Vought Plus. And more importantly, it gave him a sense of order. The world was a chaotic, terrifying place filled with superpowered anomalies, but Vought managed the chaos. They put the lightning in a bottle and sold it as energy drinks. Leo believed in the system because the alternative was staring up at the sky and wondering when a god might decide to step on you. He paused at the crosswalk, waiting for the light. Above him, a 60-foot digital billboard illuminated the smoggy Manhattan haze. It was a loop of Homelander, the American demigod, smiling that perfect, reassuring smile. His teeth were white enough to signal surrender, his eyes blue enough to drown in. Safe, the billboard promised. You are safe because he is watching. Leo took a sip of his overpriced latte, the cup emblazoned with Queen Maeve's silhouette, and exhaled. The anxiety that lived in his chest, the tight knot of fear he'd carried since childhood, loosened just a fraction. Then the air tore open. It wasn't a sound so much as a pressure change, a sudden violent vacuum that popped eardrums and shattered the windows of the Starbucks behind him. Leo dropped his coffee hands flying to his ears as the reality of the alleyway across the street convulsed. The air shimmered, turning the color of a bruised plum, and spat something out. The figure hit the asphalt with the wet, heavy grace of a sack of wet cement dropped from a moving truck. A man, or something shaped like a man encased in red and black tactical leather that looked like it had seen a war, or perhaps caused one. He rolled limbs flailing with the chaotic energy of a drunk Zamboni driver and came to a stop against a dumpster painted with a faded mural of the deep. Leo froze. This wasn't a hero he recognized. He knew the roster. He memorized the D-listers and the rejects for work. This was new. This was an anomaly. The man in red sat up, dusting off his knees. He tilted his head, the white patches on his mask narrowing as if squinting at the world. He didn't check for broken bones. He didn't groan in pain. He looked at the dumpster, then up at the towering skyscrapers, where Vought International logos burned on every third building like corporate herpes. Aggressive, the man said. His voice was gravel wrapped in sandpaper, muffled slightly by the mask, but carrying weirdly well over the city noise. He turned his head, scanning the bodega shelves lined with superhero energy drinks, the newsstand plastering A-Train's face over a magazine cover, and finally the massive Homelander billboard. Selling. What the fuck was that fascism-flavored protein powder? The man muttered, standing up. He looked directly at a patch of empty air to his left, pointing a gloved finger at nothing. Oh no, 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 no. I know this universe. I've seen this show. This is the one where the heroes are all psychopaths and the corporations are evil. He paused, leaning in toward the invisible camera. Wait, that's just regular America with better special effects budgets. Leo took a step back, his heart hammering against his ribs. The man was insane. A rogue soup. A mental patient in a Halloween costume. The red and black suit was scuffed, smelling of ozone, and old blood, edgy in a way that felt curated for a different kind of reality. Good, the man said, brushing interdimensional residue off his shoulder pads. I'll fit right in with all the darkness and grim satire. A scream shattered the surreal moment. It came from 3 blocks over, high-pitched and terrified. Leo flinched, his training kicking in. Don't run toward the sound. Stay put. Wait for the 7. But the man in red didn't wait. His head snapped toward the sound with a predator's instinct, honed by decades of mercenary work and a severe case of untreated ADHD. Then came the sound Leo dreaded most, the distinctive wet crunch of a human body hitting concrete at terminal velocity. It was a sound that didn't belong in a civilized city, a sound of meat and bone meeting physics. Silence followed, then laughter. It wasn't the maniacal cackle of a supervillain from the old comic books. It was casual, bored laughter, the kind a teenager makes when they toss a firecracker at a stray cat. The kind of laughter that comes from someone who sees people as ants. Yep, the red-suited man confirmed, reaching behind his back. 2 metallic shings rang out as he drew twin katanas, the blades catching the harsh glare of the billboard. Definitely that universe. The one where collateral damage isn't just accepted, it's a business model. He didn't run, he jogged. A casual, loping gait as if he were heading to a convenience store rather than a crime scene. Leo shouldn't have followed. He should have run the other way, back to the office, back to the safety of his monitors. But the crowd was already moving, a tide of morbid curiosity pulling him along. He merged with the stream of tourists and office workers. Phone cameras already raised vertical screens, capturing the horror before eyes had even processed it. They gathered at the street corner. In the center of the intersection lay the body of a teenager. Hoodie, sneakers, headphones still around his neck. He looked like he'd been running. His body was broken, twisted at angles that made Leo's stomach turn. Nobody was helping. Nobody was checking for a pulse. They were filming. Hovering 15 feet above the corpse, framed by the sun like a descending angel, was Stormfront. Leo's breath hitched. Stormfront was popular. She was the edgy, truth-telling patriot the Poles loved. Her American flag motif costume was tight, sleek, and pristine. Her cape fluttered in a wind that didn't exist at street level. She wasn't looking at the boy she'd just dropped. She was checking her phone. "Starlight's not here," a voice muttered next to Leo. He jumped. The man in red had pushed through the crowd, standing right beside him. Wrong, blonde. "Oh, Jesus, is that Stormfront?" the hero announced to her own phone camera, her smile radiating a blinding, terrifying warmth. She held the device up, live streaming to millions. "Just stopped a criminal." She gestured vaguely with one hand at the broken boy on the pavement. "Caught him endangering real Americans. You know how it is, guys. Sometimes you have to make the hard calls to keep our streets safe." She winked. "Remember to use code LIGHTNING at checkout for 15% off Vought Plus subscriptions." Leo looked at the boy. He saw the backpack spilled open, textbooks, a bag of chips, no weapon, no danger, just a kid. The cognitive dissonance slammed into Leo like a physical blow. "She's a hero," his brain insisted. She stopped a criminal, but his eyes saw a murder. "Nazi Barbie does Instagram sponsorships," the man in red said loudly. The crowd went silent. The chatter of the live stream, the clicking of cameras, the city noise, it all evaporated. "Cool, cool, cool." The man continued, his voice carrying an impossible nonchalance. "I'm in the worst timeline. Not the worst, there's that one where all the Creases are Hemsworths, but close." Stormfront's head snapped toward him. Her predatory precision was terrifying. Enhanced hearing. She had heard him over the traffic, over the crowd, over her own ego. "Civilian," she called out. Her voice was modulated, professional, the tone of a police officer, warning a jaywalker, but underneath crackled a threat wrapped in static. Electricity danced between her fingers, purple arcs of plasma jumping from knuckle to knuckle. Designated hero work zone. For your safety, please step back. Her eyes narrowed as they landed on the red suit. What the fuck are you supposed to be? The man spread his arms wide, the katanas hanging loosely in his hands. Oh me, I'm Deadpool, the Merc with the mouth, the regenerating degenerate, the sultan of sarcasm, the guy in a costume. Stormfront descended. Her boots touched the asphalt with superhuman grace, making no sound. Up close, her smile had all the warmth of a termination email from HR. Leo shrank back, trying to make himself small, but he couldn't look away. Cute, Stormfront said. Halloween's not for 8 months, but I appreciate the enthusiasm for hero culture. She reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a glossy 8x10 headshot. Maybe get an autograph, $20. Cash or Venmo. Deadpool looked at the photo. He looked at the dead kid whom the flies were starting to find. He looked at the crowd phones raised like a phalanx of shields. Then he looked back at Stormfront's smile, a smile that didn't reach her eyes because nothing reached her eyes except ego and electricity. I have several questions, Deadpool said. He stepped forward, entering the personal space of a woman who could vaporize a tank. First, Nazi lightning or regular lightning. The purple is a bold choice, very Prince, but the fascism ruins the vibe. Second, is that kid dead because he was brown or just because he existed near you? Third, and this is important. He leaned in, whispering loudly enough for the entire intersection to hear. Does this universe have chimichangas for breakfast? Because I'm starving. Stormfront's smile cracked. Just for a second, it was a glitch in the Vought programming. Her PR training warred with her Aryan superiority complex, and for a moment, simple confusion won. What did you just... I called you a Nazi, Deadpool, interrupted his voice, losing the playful lilt, sharpening into a blade. Because you are one. Liberty Right 1970s era, loves a good cross-burning, definitely has strong opinions about replacement theory. I've seen the show. Season 2 episode. Well, I forget the episode, but the subtext wasn't exactly subtle. The air pressure dropped. The hair on Leo's arms stood up. The ozone smell intensified, tasting like copper on the back of his tongue. You speak treason, Stormfront whispered, the mask of the American sweetheart dissolving to reveal the monster beneath. I speak fluent, spoiler, Deadpool retorted. Lightning hit him. It wasn't a warning shot. It was an execution. A bolt of concentrated plasma thicker than a man's thigh slammed into Deadpool's chest. The impact was deafening, a thunderclap that shattered the windows of the bodega and set car alarms screaming for blocks. Leo was thrown backward, the shockwave knocking the wind out of him. He scrambled on the pavement, covering his head as debris rained down. He looked up just in time to see the red and black figure launched through the front window of a Korean restaurant. The man flew through the dining area, through the kitchen wall, and slammed into the walk-in freezer with enough force to crack the building's foundation. Smoke poured from the hole in the restaurant. The smell of charred meat filled the air, not pork or beef, but something sweeter, sicker. Oh my God, a woman near Leo sobbed. She killed him. She just killed him. Stormfront hovered again, electricity crackling violently across her skin, her eyes glowing with absolute murder. She addressed the crowd, her voice tight with rage. He was a super terrorist. You all saw it. He attacked me. I had to neutralize the threat. Leo stared at the smoking ruin of the restaurant. His belief system, that carefully constructed wall of order, was trembling. She hadn't neutralized a threat. She had vaporized a heckler. Then a sound came from the darkness of the destroyed kitchen. A groan, followed by the sound of glass crunching under boots. Ow, a voice observed. It was weak, wet, bubbling with blood, but strengthening by the syllable. That's going to leave a mark. Or not. Wait. Stormfront froze. The crowd gasped. Deadpool walked out of the smoke. His chest was a ruin, a charred, smoking crater where his sternum used to be. Leo could see white bone knitting itself back together, muscle fibers weaving like high-speed looms, skin closing over the wound in real time. It was grotesque. It was miraculous. Deadpool brushed a piece of kimchi off his shoulder. He rolled his neck, a sickening pop echoing in the silence. He looked at Stormfront, whose jaw had actually dropped. "Oh, good," Deadpool said, drawing his katanas again. The metal sang a song of violence. The Nazis mad. That's how you know you're doing something right. He turned to the crowd, to Leo, and winked with the eye that wasn't currently regenerating. "If you want to see more characters enter different universes," he said to the terrifying silence, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see next in the comments below. He turned back to the hovering demigod. "Now," Deadpool said, crouching into a combat stance, "let's see if you bleed as much as you tweet." The air in the intersection didn't just smell like ozone anymore. It smelled like cooked meat and expensive perfume. Stormfront came through the hole in the restaurant wall. Like lightning, made flesh a blur of kinetic rage that shattered the remaining glass storefronts on the block. She didn't fly. She projected herself a missile of American exceptionalism aimed squarely at the man in red. Deadpool met her with blades that had in other timelines killed gods, demons, and one particularly aggressive Girl Scout. The collision was a thunderclap that knocked Leo Vance off his feet again. He scrambled backward on hands and knees, his palms scraping against the asphalt, his eyes wide and burning from the smoke. The fight spilled into the street, brutal and fast, completely one-sided in power scale, but somehow the man in red kept talking. So questioned, Deadpool grunted, dodging an electrical blast that vaporized a blue USPS mailbox, scattering burning letters like confetti. He flipped backward, landing on a taxi that crumpled under his weight. "Does Vought's PR team know you're an actual Nazi, or do they think you're just economically conservative?" "Shut up," Stormfront screamed. Each word was punctuated with a jagged arc of purple lightning. She wasn't fighting a villain, she was trying to erase a stain. She hovered, hair crackling with static, and unleashed a torrent of energy that turned the taxi into a glowing slag heap. "That's not an answer," Deadpool yelled from inside the fire. "I'm genuinely curious about corporate complicity in—" A bolt caught his shoulder. It didn't just hit him. It burned through the suit, through the muscle, through the scapula. The smell was horrific. Leo gagged, covering his mouth with his sleeve. This wasn't the sanitized violence he moderated at Vought. In the videos Leo deleted, the blood was dark, the screams were muted. This was bright red and loud. "Fuck, that one hurt," Deadpool screamed, stumbling out of the wreckage. "What's the wattage on that? Is it 110 or 220? Because it feels like a toaster in a bathtub." Stormfront didn't laugh. She didn't banter. She descended, grabbing his throat with a hand that could crush diamonds. She lifted him 3 feet off the ground, electricity coursing through his body in ways that were definitely not consensual. Leo watched, paralyzed. He was witnessing a member of the Seven torturing a man in the middle of Manhattan. He saw the red suit char and blacken. He saw the skin underneath bubble. He saw the man's eyes boil in their sockets. "Who are you?" Stormfront demanded, her face inches from his melting mask. Her eyes held the flat effect of someone who had murdered so many people, it stopped registering as murder. It was just pest control. "What are you?" Deadpool's healing factor fought the electricity. It was a biological war being fought at a cellular level. Skin charred and regenerated in seconds. It hurt like cancer, and chemotherapy had a baby, and that baby was on fire. "I'm the guy," Deadpool wheezed, his vocal cords knitting themselves back together mid-sentence, "who's going to make your life very inconvenient." He didn't try to break her grip. He didn't try to punch her. He drove both katanas upward straight into her abdomen. Stormfront screamed. It wasn't the strategic, breathless gasp of a damsel in distress. It was a shriek of actual confused pain. She dropped him. Deadpool hit the pavement, rolled, and came up with guns drawn. Compound V durability, he noted, aiming a Desert Eagle at her bleeding stomach. Of course. Not dead, just angry. Stormfront clutched her stomach, looking at the blood on her gloved hands with disbelief. She looked at Deadpool, then at the crowd of civilians holding up phones. Leo saw her eyes dart around, calculating, assessing the PR damage, realizing the narrative had slipped the leash. "We're not done," she shrieked, electricity crackling unstably around her like a broken halo. "Rain check," Deadpool called back, holstering a gun to wave with a charred hand. "I've got Nazi punching penciled in for Thursday." She vanished into the skyline, a streak of purple light, heading toward Vought Tower to cry to corporate about the mean man with the swords. Leo sat on the curb, trembling. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the approaching sirens. Deadpool turned to the gathering crowd. He looked like a nightmare, half his mask burned away, revealing scarred hamburger meat skin that was slowly smoothing out. "Right," he said to the stunned New Yorkers. "Before the cops arrive and this gets legally complicated, anybody know where a girl can get a chimichanga and possibly political asylum in this fascist dystopia?" Ashley Barrett's phone exploded with notifications at 3:47 a.m. In the high-stakes world of Vought International Crisis Management, 3:47 a.m. meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. Nothing good ever happened at that hour. Heroes didn't save cats from trees at 3:47 a.m. They overdosed, they killed hookers, or they got caught on hot mics saying slurs. Ashley sat up in her silk sheets, her heart rate spiking from sleep to panic in 0.6 seconds. She grabbed the device with trembling hands. Her left temple was already starting to itch, the trichotillomania warning sign. 17 missed calls from Stormfront, 43 emails flagged urgent, and a text from her assistant Cameron that just said he won't die. "Fuck," Ashley whispered to her empty, minimalist apartment. "Fuck, fuck, fuck." She pulled up the first video. It had 60,000 views and was climbing vertically. The hashtag Nazi Stormfront was already trending. On the small screen, a lunatic in red and black tactical gear was stabbing Stormfront America's sweetheart, Vought's polling leader, while screaming about her political affiliations. Ashley watched the video again, slowing it down. She saw the lightning hit him. She saw the impact that should have vaporized bone. And she saw him stand up 10 seconds later like he'd been hit with a mild static shock. He healed," she muttered. She pulled a strand of hair from her scalp, the sharp pinch of pain grounding her. Her phone rang. Stormfront. Ashley's finger hovered over the decline button for a beautiful, impossible moment. She imagined throwing the phone into the toilet. She imagined moving to Vermont and opening a bed and breakfast. Then survival instinct kicked in, and she answered. Ashley Stormfront's voice vibrated with barely controlled fury. It sounded like she was chewing on aluminum foil. "There's a thing out there. It stabbed me, and it won't fucking die." Ashley was already opening her laptop, logging into Vought's internal crisis systems. I'm looking at the footage now, Stormfront. Do we know who he is? Background affiliation. He knew my name, Stormfront hissed. My real name. Liberty. He knew about the show. Ashley is someone making a fucking documentary about me. Ashley's blood went cold. Corporate espionage. A whistleblower. Someone with deep intelligence access and apparently regenerative abilities that made Gecko look like a lizard with a detachable tail. This was a nightmare scenario that hadn't even made it into the crisis management binder. "I'll have the team investigate immediately," Ashley promised, her fingers flying across the keyboard, tagging the incident report priority alpha. That alert would wake up every Vought executive on the eastern seaboard and probably ruin her entire week. Did he indicate any affiliation? The boys, CIA, a foreign government. "He indicated he's a prick who won't stay dead," Stormfront screamed. There was a crash on the other end of the line, like she had thrown a piece of furniture through a wall. She probably had. "Find him. I want his location, his background, his everything. And tell the science division I'm bringing them a present when I find him again." The line went dead. Ashley stared at the phone. Then she stared at the video playing on a loop on her laptop. The red-suited man moved with professional combat training, military or mercenary grade. His healing factor appeared instantaneous. Her phone rang again. A different ringtone, the one that made her stomach drop into her shoes. Stan Edgar. Miss Barrett Stan's voice was smooth, calm, and held the warmth of a contract termination. "Explain the viral video of Stormfront being assaulted by an unknown superhuman." "Sir, I'm already assembling the crisis team," Ashley said, her voice climbing an octave. "We're going to spin it as a disturbed individual, a coordinated attack by anti-American terrorists." "I'm not concerned about crisis management." Stan cut her off. His tone suggested he was drinking something expensive while watching her career die in real time. "I'm concerned about asset acquisition." Ashley paused. "Sir, this individual demonstrated a regenerative healing factor that surpassed anything in our current Compound V research," Stan said. "He's either a competitor's product that we need to acquire or an unregistered soup that we need to acquire. Either way, Miss Barrett, I expect him in a Vought facility within 48 hours. "Stormfront wants to kill him," Ashley warned. "Stormfront wants to kill everyone. That's why we keep her on a leash." "Theoretically," Stan paused. "Deploy containment team Echo 7, non-lethal capture protocols. And Miss Barrett, if the science division can replicate his abilities, Vought would own immortality. Do you understand what that's worth?" Ashley understood. It was worth her job if she failed. It was worth her life if she succeeded and learned too much. "Yes, sir, I'll coordinate with—" Stan had already hung up. Ashley pulled out 3 hair strands without realizing it, staring at them in her palm like evidence of her accelerating breakdown. Then she opened the internal directory, finding the contact for Vought's Enhanced Threat Response Unit, the team that usually handled rogue soups or corporate espionage with superpowers. While she typed the acquisition order, her laptop pinged with facial recognition results from the Global Security Database. No match found. Weapons dual katanas. Custom high-grade steel. Regeneration rate estimated 90-100% cellular restoration within 30 seconds. Threat assessment extreme. Acquisition priority maximum. The report flagged him as John Doe Red. Ashley forwarded everything to the containment team with a simple message: alive, undamaged. Science needs him intact. Then she opened Twitter and started drafting the official Vought statement. Attempted assault, one of America's heroes. Disturbed individual. Thoughts and prayers. All the corporate nothing speak that would drown reality in PR syrup. But the video kept playing. The red-suited man kept talking, kept joking while being electrocuted. And Ashley couldn't shake the feeling that Vought International had just encountered something it couldn't control, contain, or kill. Which meant someone was going to die. Probably her. Leo Vance stood on the corner of 6th Avenue long after the police had taped off the area. He should be at work. He should be at his desk flagging the uploads of this very incident, tagging them as graphic violence misinformation and burying them under the algorithm's floorboards. But he couldn't move. He stared at the spot where the teenager had died. The body was gone, whisked away by a Vought cleanup crew in a black van. The blood had been power-washed into the gutter. It was like it never happened. Except for the smell. The smell of ozone and burning meat lingered. Leo pulled out his phone. He opened the Vought Plus moderation app. His queue was already full. Hundreds of videos. Stormfront attack, red soup, Nazi allegations. His thumb hovered over the delete button. It was muscle memory. Protect the brand. Protect the narrative. Keep the world safe. But he remembered the red man's laugh. He remembered the way Stormfront looked not like a hero, but like a monster whose mask had slipped. "I know this universe," the man had said. "The heroes are all psychopaths." Leo scrolled to the clearest video of the incident. It showed everything. The dead kid, the callousness, the Nazi accusation. For the first time in 3 years at Vought, Leo didn't hit delete. He hit skip. He slipped his phone into his pocket, his hands shaking, and walked toward the subway. He wasn't a hero. He was a guy who deleted videos for a living. But today, he decided he was going to be really, really bad at his job. The digital clock on Leo Vance's workstation read 11:42 a.m. The office was a hushed hive of frantic activity. Usually the content moderation floor was filled with the low murmur of people flagging copyright violations or hate speech. Today it sounded like a trading floor during a market crash. Leo sat hunched over his 3 monitors, his headset around his neck. He hadn't deleted the video. He hadn't flagged it. He had left it alone. And now, 3 hours later, it had been ripped, re-uploaded, and shared across platforms Vought didn't even own. On his primary screen, he had access to the dark feed, the raw, unscrubbed surveillance stream from Vought's street-level cameras. It was a perk of the job or a curse. Right now, it showed a live feed from a traffic cam in Midtown. He saw the red and black figure wandering down the sidewalk, stopping at a street cart. He saw the man buy a hot dog. He saw him take a bite, looking around with the wide-eyed wonder of a tourist, completely unaware or uncaring that the entire Vought security apparatus was closing in. "Don't eat," that Leo whispered to the screen, his stomach tightening. "Run." But the man didn't run, and then the black SUVs arrived. 3 hours after surviving an electrocution that would have powered Cleveland Deadpool was eating a hot dog that tasted suspiciously like wet cardboard and patriotism. He was wandering Manhattan, taking in the sights. It was a weirdly polished version of New York. Less trash, more branding. Vought advertisements were plastered every 12 feet. 7 merchandise filled every store window. Homelander's face was on enough products to qualify as psychological warfare. You know, Deadpool said to the hot dog vendor, a guy named Steve, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. In my universe, the hot dogs are made of pig lips and regret. This tastes like synergy. Steve stared at him. That'll be $8. $8 for a tube of mystery meat. That's the real crime here. Deadpool reached for his wallet, but the air suddenly got heavy with the sound of screeching tires. 3 black SUVs boxed him into the intersection, mounting the curb and scattering pedestrians like pigeons. The doors flew open in unison. Men in tactical gear emerged, professional, armed, and definitely not cops. They moved with the silent, terrifying coordination of people who didn't have to worry about Miranda rights. Well, 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 Deadpool observed, shoving the rest of the hot dog into his mouth. Corporate goon squad. I was wondering when you'd show up. Did you guys coordinate outfits, or is matching tactical black just the uniform for I work for evil? The lead operative stepped forward. Buzz-cut, dead eyes, jawline that could cut glass. He looked like every high school bully grew up and joined a private military contractor. He raised a weapon that looked less like a gun and more like something designed by a focus group, sleek white and menacing. Wade Wilson, the operative said. His voice was flat bored. I didn't introduce myself. Deadpool mumbled around a mouthful of bun, which means you've been reading my diary or scanning my biometrics, probably the second one, less juicy, more invasive. Vought International requests your cooperation for medical evaluation and potential employment opportunities, the operative recited. Requests. Deadpool repeated, swallowing. That's adorable. I request you boys fuck off before this gets messy, but I'm guessing we're both going to ignore polite requests. The operative didn't blink. Sir, we are authorized to use necessary force. How necessary? We, talking Deadpool, drew his katanas, the metal scraping softly against the scabbards. Like dinner date necessary or marriage proposal necessary. Because I should warn you, I'm emotionally unavailable and terrible at commitment. The operative didn't waste time on banter. He fired. The weapon didn't bang. It discharged with a sound like compressed air and religious disappointment. Deadpool braced for impact, expecting a bullet. He got a dart. It hit his chest with a dull thwack, piercing the reinforced leather and sinking into the muscle. Ow, Deadpool said, looking down at the projectile. That's... Then the world tilted sideways. It wasn't like getting shot. Getting shot was a sharp, hot clarity. This was a sludge of cold darkness pouring into his veins. Electricity surged through his body, not Stormfront's lightning, but something chemical, focused and scientific. His muscles seized, locking up, as if his own nervous system had decided to go on strike. Nerve agent. He slurred his knees, hitting the pavement. His vision blurred the edges of the world, turning into static. His healing factor roared to life, fighting the cocktail, but the chemistry was aggressive. It felt like his blood was turning into cement. That's actually pretty smart. Usually people just shoot me. Hands grabbed him. Zip ties bit into his wrists, useless plastic that he would break in 30 seconds once his liver processed the drugs. But right now his arms felt like they belonged to someone else. They were lifting him, moving fast. Professional extraction protocol. Through the haze, Deadpool saw the crowd, civilians filming, but one face stood out. An older guy in a Hawaiian shirt, leaning against a storefront, watching with narrowed eyes that held a tactical assessment. He didn't look scared. He looked disappointed. Then a black hood went over Deadpool's head. If this is a kidnapping, he mumbled into the fabric, his tongue feeling 3 sizes too big. You're supposed to ask for ransom. I'm worth at least 6 chimichangas and a limited edition B. Arthur commemorative plate. Someone hit him with another dose. The chemical dark became absolute. Deadpool woke up in a room that screamed corporate holding cell. It was white, aggressively white, the kind of white that gave you a headache just by existing. Medical equipment beeped judgmentally in the corner. He was strapped to a chair with restraints that suggested Vought had read his file but hadn't understood the important parts, like the fact that restraints were just adorable suggestions, not actual impediments. "Good morning, Vietnam," he announced to the empty room. Then he paused, shaking his head to clear the cobwebs. "Wait, wrong war movie reference. Good morning, corporate dystopia that commodifies heroism and turns violence into marketable content." A speaker in the ceiling crackled, "Mr. Wilson, please remain calm." "I'm literally the calmest I've ever been," Deadpool replied, testing the tensile strength of the wrist straps. That nerve agent was nice. What was in it? Asking for a friend. The friend is my liver. It's very curious. The door hissed open. 3 people entered. First was a scientist in a lab coat that was too clean, vibrating with the desperate energy of someone who had sold their soul for tenure. Second was a corporate suit who looked like he had synergy listed as a skill on LinkedIn. And third was a woman with frazzled hair and eyes that looked like they hadn't blinked in 48 hours. Ashley Barrett. She looked like she was surviving on caffeine and anxiety alone. "Mr. Wilson." The suit stepped forward, holding a tablet like a shield. He smiled, and it was the most threatening thing Deadpool had seen all day. "I'm David Friedman, Vought Special Projects. We'd like to discuss your unique physiology." "Hard pass," Deadpool said. He snapped the restraints. It wasn't difficult. He just dislocated his thumbs, slid his hands out, and popped the joints back in with a wet crunch. The 3 visitors flinched as the leather straps hit the floor like dead snakes. "I appreciate the kidnapping. Really felt special. Very romantic," Deadpool said, standing up and stretching. "But I'm not interested in being your science experiment. I've done the tortured by scientists storyline. It won the guinea pigs 0 Oscars. Friedman took a step back, sweat beading on his forehead, but the suit kept smiling. "We're prepared to offer substantial compensation. 7-figure salary, full benefits, your own action figure line." "Tempting," Deadpool said, cracking his neck. "But I've seen what you do to your employees. Stormfront's a Nazi. Homelander's a psychopath. The Deep is... what's the polite term? Oh, right, a rapist." Ashley pulled out her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen, probably texting "send more goons." "I'm not really a join the evil corporation kind of anti-hero," Deadpool continued, advancing on them. "More of a burn it down and piss on the ashes guy." "Mr. Wilson," the scientist interjected, excitement overwhelming his self-preservation instinct. "Your regenerative capabilities could revolutionize Compound V research. We could cure diseases, extend lifespans, create more psychopathic superheroes." Deadpool stopped. He leaned in close to the scientist. "Yeah, hard pass. Where's the exit?" The door exploded. Not metaphorically. Actually exploded. Metal shredded hinges screamed, and the heavy security door flew inward, taking a chunk of the wall with it. Through the smoke and debris came 4 people who radiated wanted fugitives with nothing to lose energy. Billy Butcher led the charge. He wore a Hawaiian shirt under a tactical vest, and his eyes looked like cigarette burns. He was holding a rifle that was definitely not legal in the state of New York. Behind him was a tall, broad-shouldered black man with the bearing of a weary soldier mother's milk. A younger, skinny guy looked like he had wandered in from a Best Buy and was regretting every life choice that led him here, Huey. And a small Asian woman whose smile promised ultra-violence Kimiko. "Well, well," Butcher said, his accent thick enough to chew on. "What's Vought kidnapping these days looks like a right Muppet in a clown costume." "It's tactical red Deadpool," corrected offended. "And who are you?" Magnum P.I.'s angry British cousin Butcher grunted. "Name's Butcher. These are my associates." He gestured with the gun. "We're in the business of killing soups. Heard you stabbed Stormfront. Interested in making that a hobby." Friedman lunged for the alarm panel on the wall. Kimiko moved faster. She was a blur of motion grabbing the scientist's wrist. The crack of bone was very loud and very final. Friedman screamed and bolted out the ruined door, clutching his arm. Ashley stood frozen, clutching her phone like a talisman against evil spirits. "See, that's the problem with corporate culture," Deadpool observed, watching Friedman flee. "No loyalty. Everyone runs when things get stabby." Butcher turned his gun on Deadpool. The casual murder in his eyes wasn't a pose. It was a promise. "You with us or with them?" "That's adorable." "Thinking those are my only options," Deadpool said. He looked at Ashley, who was hyperventilating against the wall. "You okay, honey? You look like you're having a day." You can't just..." Ashley's voice climbed octaves until only dogs could hear her panic. "She's having a breakdown," Deadpool diagnosed. "Someone get her a Xanax and a new career." Huey stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of surrender that seemed habitual. "Look, we saw what you did to Stormfront. We've been trying to take down Vought for years. You clearly have abilities they want, which means you're either with them or against them. There's no neutral in this." "Switzerland would disagree," Deadpool noted. "Switzerland doesn't have to deal with Homelander mother's milk," said quietly. "You embarrassed one of the 7 on camera. Vought is going to come for you hard. We can offer protection, resources, purpose." Deadpool laughed. "Protection? I'm literally unkillable. Resources, I steal those. Purpose? I'm a mercenary. I kill people for money. What exactly are you offering?" "Soups," Butcher said simply. "Lots of them. Corporate-made psychopaths who think they're gods. You help us kill them, we help you stay off Vought's dissection table." Alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, turning the white room into a strobe-lit nightmare. "Got to go," Butcher announced. "You coming or staying?" Deadpool looked at Ashley, who represented corporate evil, systematic oppression, and dental plans. He looked at Butcher, who represented brutal vengeance, moral compromise, and bad fashion choices. He looked at the shattered door, which represented freedom and chimichangas. "Fuck it," he decided, "but I'm not killing civilians, no kids, and I get veto power on missions that are too boring." Done. Butcher lied. Deadpool knew he lied. Butcher knew Deadpool knew. They both smiled like sharks who had found fresh chum in the water. Kimiko handed him his swords. She'd grabbed them from the containment locker on the way in professional courtesy. Deadpool took them, feeling the familiar weight. "I like her," he said, pointing a katana at Kimiko. "She's scary." They moved. The escape was loud. Vought security forces converged on the corridor, but they weren't ready for this specific combination of insanity. Butcher and MM laid down suppressing fire with military precision. Kimiko was a whirlwind of violence, tearing through armored guards like wet tissue paper. Frenchie, who was waiting in the van outside, had rigged the exit. By the way, Deadpool yelled over the sound of gunfire as they sprinted toward the loading dock. "I'm from another dimension. I've seen your show. I know how this ends. And spoiler alert, it's bad for like everyone." "Don't care," Butcher shouted back, firing a grenade launcher at a pursuing security drone. "Long as we kill some soups first." "Yeah," Deadpool sighed, vaulting over a groaning security guard. "That tracks." They piled into a beat-up van that smelled of ozone and stale cigarettes. Frenchie floored it, and they peeled out of the Vought facility just as a containment team blew the doors off the loading bay. Leo Vance watched it all. He was sitting in a stall in the men's bathroom on the 4th floor of Vought Tower, streaming the security feed on his phone. He saw the carnage. He saw the red-suited man leave with the terrorists. Leo felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't fear, it was vertigo, the feeling of standing on a precipice. The neat, orderly world of Vought was cracking. He had helped crack it by leaving that video up. He flushed the toilet just for the noise and walked back to his desk. He had a lot of work to do, or undo. The boys' headquarters was a shithole basement that made a crack den look like the Ritz-Carlton. It smelled like mold desperation and whatever Frenchie was cooking that definitely wasn't FDA approved. Exposed pipes dripped rhythmically. A weapons cache that would make the ATF weep openly sat on a table. A murder board covered the far wall, plastered with photos of soups, with red X's drawn through their faces. Cozy Deadpool observed stepping over a puddle of questionable origin. Very serial killer chic. "Where's the bathroom? I need to catalog my internal organs and make sure the kidnapping didn't rearrange anything important." "Third door. Jiggle the handle," MM said, already disassembling his rifle with the focus of a man who found order in the mechanics of death. Deadpool did his business and returned to find the mood in the room had shifted from frantic escape to paranoid interrogation. Butcher poured a glass of amber liquid that looked thick enough to clean engine parts. He slid it across the table toward Deadpool. "Right then," Butcher said, leaning back in a creaking chair. "Let's talk business. You're clearly not normal, even by soup standards. That healing factor, you born with it or lab-grown?" "Lab-grown," actually, Deadpool said, picking up the glass and sniffing it. It smelled like gasoline and regret. "Weapon X program. They gave me cancer, then cured it, then gave me regeneration, then made it permanent by torturing me until my DNA got confused and decided living forever was better than dying. It was a whole thing, very traumatic. I don't like to talk about it, which is why I'm talking about it." Compound VMM asked, skeptical. "Different universe, different super soldier serum, but functionally similar," Deadpool explained. "People playing God, creating monsters, acting surprised when monsters do monster things." Huey looked up from his laptop where he was monitoring the police scanners. "Did you say different universe?" "Yep. Portaled in from Marvel Land, where the heroes are mostly good people with issues, not corporate psychopaths with god complexes." Deadpool took a sip of the drink and immediately regretted it. Well, except Tony Stark. He's kind of a dick, but like a fun dick. The room went quiet. Kimiko tilted her head, reading him like a book written in a language she didn't know, but understood the rhythm of. "He's fucking with us," Butcher decided. "I'm really not." Deadpool pulled out his phone. "No signal. Wrong universe's cell towers. But check the camera roll." He tossed the phone to Frenchie. The Frenchman caught it, swiped through the photos, and his eyes widened. "Mon Dieu," Frenchie whispered. "That is either very good Photoshop or..." Or I'm from a universe where superhero stories are aspirational instead of cautionary tales, Deadpool finished. He looked around the dingy basement at the tired, angry faces of the boys. Which is why this place is so fucking depressing. You people took the concept of heroes and turned it into a corporate horror show. We didn't do shit, Butcher growled, slamming his hand on the table. Vought did. Been making soups for decades, selling them as heroes covering up their crimes. We're just trying to kill the bastards before they kill more innocents. By using brutal violence and morally questionable tactics, Deadpool asked. By using necessary violence and effective tactics, Butcher corrected. See, that's what every villain says. Butcher's smile went sharp. Never said we were heroes, mate. We're the cunts who do what heroes can't or won't or are too busy selling protein powder to bother with while Before Deadpool could respond, probably with a dick joke, the monitors on the wall started blaring. Turn it up, Huey said, his face paling. It was live coverage of Vought Tower. Homelander stood on the roof, his cape fluttering perfectly in the wind. He was addressing the cameras with the smile of a man who had never heard the word no. Earlier today, Homelander said, his voice carrying that artificial warmth that focus groups loved. A disturbed individual in tactical gear assaulted one of your heroes. Stormfront is recovering because she's strong and she's American. The crowd below cheered, but I want to make something clear to whoever this costume criminal is. Homelander's eyes found a camera. He leaned in. Even through the grainy screen, the malice was palpable. It radiated off him like heat. I'm coming for you, Homelander said, and when I find you, you'll wish you'd never put on that ridiculous costume. The feed cut to the Vought logo. Fuck, said quietly. Double fuck, Huey added. He just painted a target on your back, Butcher observed, sounding almost impressed. Homelander don't make public threats unless he's planning to follow through violently. Deadpool watched the screen, his expression unreadable behind the mask. Homelander, he repeated, the Superman knockoff with mommy issues and a god complex. Can he be annoyed to death because that's my specialty? Butcher laughed, actual amusement breaking through the cynicism. You're fucking mental. I'm aware, Deadpool said. He stood up, checking his katanas again. But here's the thing about invulnerable psychopaths. With god complexes, they're not used to people who don't care. I literally cannot die, which means I can annoy him forever. Tactical immortality. That's not a strategy, Huey protested. It's my strategy, Deadpool said. And it's worked on Thanos' Apocalypse and one very angry Wolverine. He looked at the basement ceiling as if he could see through the concrete and steel all the way to the top of Vought Tower. If he's coming for me, Deadpool said, might as well make it interesting. The basement door didn't open. It didn't even break. It simply ceased to exist as a barrier vaporizing into a cloud of shrapnel and dust under the impact of a god arriving late for dinner. The explosion of concrete and steel threw the boys backward. Huey scrambled under the table. Frenchie dove behind his workbench. Covered his head, shielding himself from the debris. Butcher just stood his ground, raising his rifle, though he knew they all knew it was a gesture, not a defense. Through the settling dust he descended. Homelander floated 2 inches off the cracked linoleum floor. His cape was pristine, untouched by the dirty bomb of an entrance he'd just made. His hair was immaculate. His eyes were glowing with the soft red luminescence of a dying star. Found you, he said. His voice was cheerful, the kind of tone a father uses when he finds his kids playing hide-and-seek, but laced with the promise of imminent catastrophic violence. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with the static of his presence. It was the physical weight of a predator that had no natural enemies. "Scatter," Butcher roared. "Tactical retreat, go!" The boys moved. Frenchie threw a smoke canister that hissed and spat useless gray fog. Kimiko grabbed Huey and dragged him toward the escape tunnel. Provided covering fire that pinged harmlessly off Homelander's chest like hail on a tank. Homelander ignored them. He didn't even blink as a .556 round flattened itself against his cheekbone. He floated through the chaos, his eyes locked entirely on the man in the red suit. "You're the one who stabbed Stormfront, Homelander," said, stepping over a pile of rubble. Guilty Deadpool confirmed, dusting off his shoulders. He didn't run. He stood in the center of the room, katanas loose in his hands. Also the one who called her a Nazi, which she is, and made fun of her costume, which she deserved. Seriously, the lightning bolts. A bit on the nose, don't you think? Homelander stopped 3 feet away. The heat coming off him was palpable now, a dry, oven-like intensity. "I don't care about Stormfront," Homelander said softly. "I care that some nobody in a Halloween costume thinks he can attack my team and walk away." "Your team," Deadpool tilted his head. "I thought they were Vought's corporate assets. You know, line items on a spreadsheet, depreciation write-offs." Homelander's smile twitched. "You think you're funny. You think because you can heal you're special. I'm going to pull your spine out through your throat." Kinky Deadpool quipped. "But I should warn you, I heal like everything. You could literally pull my spine out and I'd grow a new one. It's very gross. You'd hate it. Lots of squelching." The heat vision fired. It wasn't a warning. It was a reflex of pure irritation. 2 beams of concentrated solar energy slammed into the wall where Deadpool's head had been a fraction of a second earlier. Concrete vaporized into molten slag. The heat was instantaneous, searing the air. Deadpool dove left, rolling over a crate of stolen munitions. He came up with his Desert Eagles drawn. Bang, bang, bang. He fired a professional spread center mass head throat. The bullets hit Homelander with the sound of hammers striking an anvil. They flattened, falling to the floor like aggressive raindrops. Invulnerable Homelander sighed, looking down at his suit, where the bullets had left faint smudges of lead. Bored. "Did you really think—" Bang! Deadpool shot him in the eye. It was a perfect shot, a 1-in-a-million trajectory. The bullet struck the soft tissue of the cornea. It didn't penetrate. It couldn't. But the physics of a high-caliber round impacting a sensory organ, even an invulnerable one, still applied. Homelander flinched. He blinked hard, his head snapping back a fraction of an inch. A single tear induced by the impact leaked from the corner of his eye. The room went dead silent. Homelander touched his eye. He looked at his finger. No blood. Just moisture. But the expression on his face shifted from boredom to apocalyptic fury. "Oh, good," Deadpool said, reloading with a casual click-clack. "You can feel stuff. That's helpful. Means you're not completely invincible. Just really, really durable." Homelander moved. He moved faster than human synapses could process visual information. One moment he was standing there. The next, his hand was wrapped around Deadpool's throat. The impact of the grip crushed Deadpool's windpipe instantly. Cervical vertebrae shattered. The soft tissue of his neck turned to pulp. Homelander didn't squeeze, he launched. He flew straight up, through the basement ceiling, through the floor of the abandoned factory above, through the roof. They ascended into the New Jersey sky like a reverse meteor. The air screamed. Deadpool's body trailed behind like a rag doll held only by the vice grip on his ruined neck. Leo Vance was staring at the telemetry on the big board, the massive screen in the Vought Operations Center that tracked the movements of the Seven. Usually, Homelander's icon was a steady, reassuring blue dot hovering over Vought Tower or a scheduled PR event. Right now, the dot was red, and it was moving at Mach 2, vertical. "What is he doing?" the shift commander whispered. "We have no flight plan filed, no intercept protocols." Leo watched the altitude counter spin. 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet. "He's going stratospheric," Leo said, his voice trembling. He looked at the unauthorized video feed on his phone, the shaky footage from the street earlier that day. Then he looked at the red dot. Homelander wasn't saving anyone. He was taking someone for a ride. "Protocol says we notify Mr. Edgar," the commander said, reaching for the phone. "Don't," Leo said. The word slipped out before he could stop it. The commander looked at him, confused. "Excuse me. If you call Edgar," Leo improvised, his heart hammering against his ribs, "and it turns out Homelander is just blow-drying his hair at 30,000 feet, you'll look incompetent. Wait for the descent." It was a weak lie, but in the culture of Vought, fear of looking incompetent was a powerful motivator. The commander hesitated, hand hovering over the receiver. Leo stared at the screen. He's going to drop him, Leo thought. He's going to drop him from the edge of the world. The air was thin and bitingly cold. Manhattan was a grid of glittering lights far below, looking like a circuit board designed by a madman. Homelander hovered at 35,000 feet. The wind whipped his cape into a frenzy. He held Deadpool at arm's length, staring at him with a mixture of scientific curiosity and profound disgust. Deadpool hung there, gasping. His healing factor was working overtime, knitting his crushed windpipe back together, just enough to allow air to wheeze in. "Let's test that healing factor," Homelander suggested. His voice didn't need to be shouted. Up here in the silence of the stratosphere, it carried perfectly. "Joke's on you," Deadpool choked out, blood bubbling past his lips. "I love skydiving." Homelander wound up like a pitcher and threw him. He threw him not just down, but hard. He added his own superhuman strength to gravity's embrace. Deadpool broke the sound barrier before he passed the Empire State Building's spire height. The descent was violent. The air friction heated Deadpool's suit, turning the red leather into a blur of melting plastic. He was a human meteor streaking toward the dark ribbon of the East River. "Okay," Deadpool thought as the G-force peeled his eyelids back. "This is going to suck. This is going to suck so much." He had time for one coherent thought. "I hope I land on a fish. Specifically, the deep's favorite fish." He hit the water. Water at that speed isn't liquid, it's concrete. The impact shattered every bone in Deadpool's body simultaneously. His ribcage collapsed into a fine powder. His pelvis turned to shrapnel. His organs ruptured like overfilled water balloons. The shockwave of his entry capsized a nearby garbage scow and sent a plume of water 200 feet into the air. He sank. Darkness, cold, the crushing pressure of the East River. His brain, protected by a skull that was currently in 14 pieces, flickered. The healing factor kicked in. It wasn't the slow, steady repair of a normal wound. It was a frantic biological emergency response. Stem cells divided at the speed of light. Bone shards were pulled back together by contracting muscle. Pain. It exploded through his nervous system like a supernova. Ow, he observed in the privacy of his own drowning mind. That was rude. He lay on the silt of the riverbed, pinned by the weight of the water and his own temporary paralysis. He watched a tire float by. A crab scuttled over his hand. Is this it? He wondered. Is this the universe where I finally stay down? No, the cancer inside him, the aggressive mutated cells that fueled his power, refused to quit. His heart beat once, twice, a rhythmic thump that grew stronger. He pushed off the muck. He swam upward, his limbs rubbery, and reforming toward the murky light of the surface. He broke the surface near a rotting wooden dock in Queens. He gasped, sucking in air that smelled of salt and sewage. He dragged himself onto the wood, looking like a discarded pile of raw hamburger meat in a shredded costume. Tourists were there. Of course they were. A family from Ohio, judging by the I Heart NY shirts. They were filming him. "Oh my God," the father said, holding up an iPhone. "Is that a zombie?" No, Deadpool gurgled, spitting out a tooth that immediately grew back. "I'm a tourist attraction. $5 for a photo. 10 for a kidney." He tried to stand. His legs were still jelly. He fell back against a pylon. Boom. A sonic boom shattered the windows of the warehouse district behind him. Water displaced violently as Homelander landed on the end of the dock. He touched down with the grace of a god dry perfect and smiling that terrible smile. The tourists screamed and ran. Homelander ignored them. He walked down the dock, the wood creaking under his boots. "You're still alive," Homelander observed. He sounded genuinely delighted. "Interesting. I get that a lot." Deadpool wheezed, clutching his reforming chest. "Usually, right before people try to kill me harder." "Oh, I'm going to kill you very hard," Homelander promised. He closed the distance in a blur, his hands wrapped around Deadpool's head, his thumbs pressed into the eye sockets. "Let's see what's inside," Homelander whispered. He squeezed. The pain was immediate, absolute, and blinding. Deadpool's skull cracked under the pressure. His vision went red, then black. But even as his eyes were being destroyed, the optic nerves were regenerating. He was trapped in a loop of blindness and sight darkness, and Homelander's grinning face. "Wow," Deadpool gurgled, blood pouring from his mouth. "You're really committed to the murder. I appreciate the dedication. Very professional." Homelander frowned. He squeezed harder. The skull gave way with a wet crunch. "Why won't you die?" Homelander demanded, frustration bleeding through the corporate mask. "Childhood trauma," Deadpool screamed, laughed, "and a really aggressive healing factor. Also spite, mostly spite." Homelander let go. He took a step back. His eyes glowed red again. "Spite," Homelander repeated. "I can work with spite." He unleashed the heat vision, point blank, into Deadpool's chest. It burned a hole the size of a dinner plate through him. Cauterized instantly, Deadpool looked down through the hole in his own torso. He could see the wood of the dock behind him. The tissue began to knit, pink raw flesh spanning the gap. Homelander watched. He tilted his head, studying the process. The rage in his eyes was replaced, just for a moment, by something colder. Calculation. "What are you?" he asked again. "I'm Deadpool." The mercenary gasped, the hole in his chest closing to the size of a fist. "We've been over this, and you're Homelander, the psychotic man-child with a god complex who murders people when his ego gets bruised." Homelander stiffened. "Careful. I've seen your character arc." Deadpool continued, pushing himself up to a sitting position. "It gets worse. Spoiler alert, you were the villain. Everyone hates you. and you die alone because you're fundamentally incapable of human connection." The silence on the dock was deafening. Homelander's face did something Leo Vance had never seen on any monitor. It cracked. The mask of the Golden Boy slipped, revealing a terrified, lonely, hateful child beneath. "What do you mean?" Homelander whispered. "You've seen it." "I've seen the show," Deadpool said, tapping his temple. "The Boys, you're in it. You're the bad guy, homie. And let me tell you, the ratings are great, but your Q score, it's tanking." Homelander stared at him. For 10 seconds, he didn't move. He didn't blink. He just processed the idea that someone somewhere was laughing at him. Then the rage returned, doubled. He grabbed Deadpool by the ankle. "Let's see if you can heal from atmospheric re-entry," Homelander said. He launched himself into the sky again, dragging Deadpool back into the clouds. Leo Vance sat at his desk, his hands trembling over the keyboard. The tracking dot was gone. Signal lost. But he had seen the street cam footage from the dock before the feed cut. He had seen the look on Homelander's face. He pulled up the Vought employee handbook on his screen. He searched for the section on whistleblowing. Page 404, not found. "Of course," Leo muttered. He opened a new browser window. He typed in a URL he had memorized from the flagged and banned list. The Boys.net tips. He stared at the submission form. "If I do this," he thought, "I'm dead. Homelander will hear my heart beating from Queens." But then he remembered the dead kid in the street. He remembered the red suit getting up again and again. "He's fighting," Leo realized. "The clown is fighting." Leo started typing. Subject: Homelander, rogue asset location. Message: "He's taking him to the stratosphere." Again: "If he survives, he'll drop him in Queens. Check the industrial district rooftops. He's obsessed." He hit send. Then he threw up in his wastebasket. The ascent was beautiful. Actually, in a terrifying, lung-collapsing sort of way, Deadpool got a solid 15 seconds of appreciating the curvature of the Earth before gravity reasserted its dominance and Homelander let go. "See you at the bottom," Homelander shouted over the roaring wind, his eyes dead and smiling. Then he threw him. The descent was less beautiful. It was mostly screaming, praying to a god he didn't believe in and who definitely didn't believe in him, and wondering if his insurance covered atmospheric re-entry via superhero tantrum. The friction turned the air into a physical hammer. His suit, already ruined, began to slag against his skin. This is it, Wade thought, watching the grid of Queens rush up to meet him like a geometric fist. "I'm going to end up as a stain on a sidewalk, a very handsome, very charred stain." He hit a rooftop in Queens hard enough to create a concrete crater. The impact didn't just break bones, it liquefied them. Shockwaves shattered the building's windows 3 floors down. Dust billowed up in a mushroom cloud of pulverized masonry. Deadpool lay in the center of the depression, his body a twisted ruin of biology, his healing factor already screaming in protest as it tried to reassemble a spine that was currently shaped like a pretzel. Homelander landed next to him a second later. He touched down with casual grace, not a hair out of place, the sonic boom of his arrival rattling the fillings of everyone in a 5-mile radius. Still alive, Homelander noted his voice clinical now. He walked to the edge of the crater, looking down at the groaning mess of red and black. Fascinating. Vought would pay billions for that healing factor. Maybe I should bring you in alive. Let the scientists figure out how to replicate it. Deadpool wheezed. His lungs were inflating, pushing broken ribs back into alignment with sickening clicks and pops. He rolled onto his back, staring up at the blonde god blocking out the sun. Or Deadpool gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. You could kiss me. Break the tension. Homelander's lip curled. He reached down to grab Deadpool's throat again. Deadpool moved. It was a desperate, sloppy strike, but it was fast. He drove his remaining katana upward. The blade caught Homelander in the ribs. It didn't penetrate far. Invulnerability was real, and Vought built their monsters tough. But it went in. A quarter inch. Maybe less. But enough. Homelander froze. He looked down at the blade sticking out of his suit. He looked at the single impossible drop of red blood blooming on the blue fabric. His expression went apocalyptic. It wasn't anger, it was the shattering of a world view. He was the Homelander. He didn't bleed. He couldn't bleed. You made me bleed, he whispered. The sound was more terrifying than his shouting. Yeah, about that Deadpool started. Homelander grabbed the katana. He snapped the high-grade steel like a dry twig. Then, with a motion too fast to track, he drove the shattered blade through Deadpool's chest, pinning him to the rooftop. Nobody makes me bleed, Homelander hissed. Nobody. The heat vision came next. It wasn't the quick blasts from before. This was sustained, scorching surgical. He aimed for the shoulders, the knees, the gut. Designed not to kill, but to hurt, to dismantle. Deadpool's flesh bubbled. It charred, fell away, regenerated, and charred again. A loop of agony that felt like eternity. The smell of his own cooking meat filled his nose. Okay, Deadpool wheezed through melting lungs. Okay, you've made your point. You're very powerful and very angry. Classic overcompensation. Did Daddy not hug you enough? Oh, wait. You were raised in a lab by scientists who definitely didn't hug you at all. The heat vision intensified, boring a hole through his shoulder. See, here's the thing about torture. Deadpool continued, his voice ragged but relentless. His mouth simply didn't believe in self-preservation. It only works if the person being tortured wants it to stop. I've been tortured by professionals, government black sites, Weapon X, one particularly aggressive telemarketer. Homelander stopped. He stood over Deadpool, breathing heavy, his eyes still glowing with residual heat. He looked confused. Why wasn't this working? Why wasn't the man begging? You're good, Deadpool rasped, spitting out a clot of blood. Don't get me wrong, but you're not that good. What do you want? Homelander demanded. Everyone wants something. Money, power, fame, love. What do you want? Deadpool considered this while his collarbone knit itself back together. Honestly, he said, a chimichanga, maybe two. I'm very hungry, and you've been very rude about murdering me instead of letting me eat. Homelander stared at him. The god complex was cracking. Here was someone he couldn't kill, couldn't intimidate, couldn't impress. Someone who didn't worship him or fear him. Someone who just wanted Mexican food. You're insane, Homelander decided clinically. Yes, Deadpool agreed, but I'm fun insane. You're just sad insane. There's a difference. Homelander opened his mouth to speak, to threaten to unleash more violence, but a phone rang. It wasn't Deadpool's, it was Homelander's. He pulled a sleek smartphone from a hidden pocket in his cape. He answered it without looking away from Deadpool, his eyes still burning with murder. What? Homelander snapped. A pause. I don't care about the PR mess. I'm busy. Another pause, longer this time. His jaw tightened until a vein throbbed in his temple. Fine, fine. Tell Ashley I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up. He looked at Deadpool with frustration and something that might have been curiosity. This isn't over, Homelander promised. It never is with you narcissists, Deadpool sighed. Homelander flew away. A sonic boom rattled the remaining windows, leaving Deadpool pinned to a rooftop in Queens, with a shattered sword in his chest, and deep philosophical questions about whether annoying, invulnerable psychopaths was a sustainable long-term strategy. Probably not, he said to nobody, pulling the broken blade from his sternum with a wet schlunk. But it's funny, so I'm going to keep doing it. Deadpool stood bones cracking back into place. He walked to the edge of the roof and looked down. Sirens wailed. Helicopters circled. And down on the street, parked in an alleyway that was technically illegal, was a beat-up van. The side door slid open. Butcher leaned out, looking up. He raised a middle finger in greeting. Taxi Deadpool called out cheerfully and jumped. Leo Vance watched the news report from his cubicle. The ticker tape at the bottom of the screen read, "Unknown soup battle in Queens. Property damage estimated in millions." He had done it. His tip had worked. The boys had found him. But Leo didn't feel like a hero. He felt sick. He looked at the footage of the destroyed rooftop. He thought about the people who lived in that building, the people who were just eating lunch or watching TV when a god threw a man through their ceiling. He had intervened. He had poked the bear, and the bear had torn apart an apartment complex. Leo. He jumped. His supervisor, a woman named Janice, who breathed corporate policy, was standing over him. "You're flagging on output," she said, tapping his monitor. "We need to clear the queue. The algorithm is struggling with the volume of Nazi Stormfront posts." "Right," Leo said, his voice hollow. "Sorry, on it." He turned back to his screen. A new video popped up. It wasn't from a phone. It was surveillance footage. Grainy, dark. It showed a van pulling away from an alley in Queens. Leo's hand hovered over the delete key. If I delete this, Vought can't track them, he thought. If I leave it, they die. He hit delete. It was a small choice, a quiet choice. But in the silence of the office, it felt like pulling a trigger. The van smelled like gun oil, sweat, and cheap pizza. "You look like shit," Butcher observed as Deadpool climbed in his suit, hanging off him in charred ribbons. "You should see the other guy," Deadpool said, buckling up. "Actually, you shouldn't. He looks perfect. It's infuriating. He bleeds, though. Got a drop out of him." The van went silent. Frenchie looked back from the driver's seat. M.M. lowered his weapon. Even Kimiko stopped cleaning her knife. "You made Homelander bleed, M.M., asked, his voice hushed. "Just a little, like a shaving nick. But emotionally, I think I eviscerated him," Deadpool said. "He's fragile, like a glass cannon made of insecurities." Good Butcher said, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. "If he bleeds, he can die. But right now, we've got bigger problems." MM's scanner crackled with emergency dispatch audio. Domestic disturbance, soup involvement, hostage situation in Brooklyn, address matches known, Vought distribution site. "That's our next target," Butcher said, pointing at the scanner. "One of Vought's underground operations. They pump Compound V into the streets, sell it to gangs, then market the super criminals as proof society needs more heroes. It's a closed loop of profit and misery." "We burn it down," Butcher continued. "Cut off the supply." "Hostages," MM repeated, listening to the chatter. "Dispatch says civilians trapped inside." "Then we extract them first," Deadpool said, leaning forward. "Right? We're not just burning it down with people inside." Butcher's smile was thin, sharp, and entirely devoid of warmth. "Of course not. We're not monsters." The way he said it made Deadpool's danger sense, usually reserved for bullets and falling pianos, start screaming. The operation went smooth until it didn't, which in Deadpool's experience was exactly how every operation went. They breached the warehouse at 3:00 a.m. Frenchie's explosives opened a side entrance with a polite thump. Provided cover fire, dropping 2 guards with non-lethal rounds to the chest. Huey hacked the security system from the van, sweating through his t-shirt. Deadpool and Kimiko went in first, the two who could take damage and keep moving, the tanks. The warehouse was cavernous, filled with wooden crates marked with innocent shipping labels. But inside was Compound V, enough blue liquid to turn half of New York into gods or monsters. And in the center, guarding the stash, were 3 gang members who had already injected. They were manifesting badly. One had skin like wet concrete and murder in his eyes. Another was floating 6 inches off the ground, blood pouring from his eyes as he tried to hold the air still with his mind. The third was on fire. Not metaphorically. He was a human torch, but he couldn't control it. The flames were consuming him, eating his clothes, his skin, his hair. He was screaming a high, thin sound of absolute agony. "Help me," the burning boy begged. He looked maybe 19, a kid. Stupid choices, bad circumstances, and Vought's product destroying him in real time. Frenchie Deadpool yelled into his comms. "Fire suppressant. Now." Non-Frenchie's voice came back flat and sad. "He is already dead. The V is cooking him from the inside. If we help him, we risk the others." "He's a kid," Deadpool shouted, stepping toward the flames. The heat was intense, singing his already damaged suit. "He's a ticking bomb." Butcher's voice cut and cold as ice. "And we've got 60 seconds before Vought's response team arrives. Get the hostages." Deadpool looked to the corner. A dozen warehouse workers, civilians, terrified, zip-tied, were huddled behind pallets of V2 security guards. A cleaning lady. They were screaming at the sight of the burning boy. The concrete-skinned Supa charged Kimiko. She met him head-on, a blur of violence. The telekinetic Soup tried to lift Deadpool. Wade felt gravity invert his feet, leaving the floor, but then the Soupy screamed and clutched his head, his brain hemorrhaging from the effort. Deadpool landed hard. He looked at the burning kid. The kid's flesh was sloughing off. He reached out a hand, a skeletal, flaming hand toward Deadpool. "Please," the kid wept. "Please make it stop." Deadpool drew his gun. He aimed for the head. Mercy kill, quick, clean. It was the only kindness left in this room. Butcher grabbed his wrist. "Don't," Butcher said. "Gunshot attracts the response team outside. They hear it, they breach. They breach, a firefight starts. A firefight starts those hostages in the corner. Catch stray rounds. Let him burn." Deadpool stared at Butcher. "That's fucking cruel." "That's tactical," Butcher snapped. "You want to save him? Go ahead. Be a hero. But while you're playing hero, those 12 people over there die when Vought's kill team shows up. Choose." Deadpool looked at the hostages. They were terrified, watching him, waiting for him to decide if they lived or died. He looked at the burning kid. The boy's eyes were melting. He was dying. He was unsavable. Butcher was right. It was brutal arithmetic. It was the calculus of a universe that didn't believe in happy endings. Deadpool lowered the gun. He turned his back on the boy. The screaming went on for another 40 seconds. It sounded like an eternity. It sounded like failure. Move them out," Deadpool roared, his voice cracking. Hustled the hostages toward the exit. Frenchie planted the charges on the V crates. Kimiko snapped the concrete guy's neck when he wouldn't stay down. The telekinetic bled out on his own, collapsing into a heap. They evacuated 30 seconds before Vought's team arrived. Deadpool was the last one out. He didn't look back at the charred, silent lump in the center of the floor. As they hit the alley, Frenchie triggered the detonator. Boom! The warehouse imploded. A fireball consumed the evidence, the bodies, the compound fee, and Deadpool's illusion that he could operate in this universe without getting blood on his hands. The van ride back was silent, heavy. Huey looked sick, staring at his knees. MM's jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the road. Kimiko signed something to Frenchie that didn't need translation. "You did the right thing," Butcher said to Deadpool, breaking the silence. He was cleaning his nails with a knife, calm as a graveyard. Saved the innocents. That's what matters. "I let a kid burn to death," Deadpool said quietly. He was staring at his hands. No blood, the healing factor had processed it all, but he could still smell the burning flesh. It was stuck in his nose. "You prioritized savable lives over unsavable ones," Butcher said. "That's called triage. Welcome to war." "This isn't war," Deadpool muttered. This is exactly war," Butcher interrupted, his voice hard. "Vought's got unlimited resources, legal immunity, and superhuman soldiers. We got spit anger and occasional competence. Every mission's a triage situation. You save who you can, and you accept the bodies you can't." Deadpool looked out the window at the passing city lights. In his universe, there was always a third option. A clever quip, a lucky break, a last-minute save. Spider-Man would have webbed the kid. Iron Man would have used foam. Someone would have done something. "In my universe," Deadpool said, "we find the third option. We save everyone. That's what heroes do." "Then it's good you're not in your universe," Butcher said. "Not unkindly, just factually. Because in this one, heroes are the villains. And the best we can hope for is minimizing casualties while we burn down their empire." The safe house appeared ahead. "For what it's worth," MM said from the front seat, "you made the right call. Those hostages are alive because you chose them over comfort." "Doesn't feel right," Deadpool said. "It's not supposed to," Huey added softly. "The day it feels right is the day we've become what we're fighting." Deadpool looked at Huey, young, haunted already, showing cracks from the violence and moral compromise. This universe ate good people and spit out cynics. "How long you been doing this?" Deadpool asked. 2 years, Huey said. "Feels like 20. "Does it get easier?" "No," MM said. "Never. That's how you know you're still human." The van parked. They unloaded weapons, secured. The site fell into routines born from trauma and necessity. Deadpool realized that in this universe there were no clean victories, just varying degrees of loss. He went to the corner of the basement, pulled his mask up halfway, and ate a cold slice of pizza. It tasted like ash. Leo Vance stood in the shower, letting the hot water run until the tank was empty. He scrubbed his skin, trying to get the feeling of the keyboard off his fingertips. He had checked the news before he got in. Warehouse explosion in Brooklyn. 12 civilians rescued. 3 fatalities. 3 fatalities. Gang members, kids probably. Leo had tipped them off. He had sent the boys there. He had saved 12 people. He had helped kill 3. He watched the water swirl down the drain. It wasn't red, but it felt like it should be. "Triage," he whispered to the tiles, testing the word. It tasted bitter. He turned off the water. The silence of his apartment was deafening. He wasn't just a moderator anymore. He was a participant, and there was no going back. Homelander found Deadpool on a rooftop in Midtown because of course he did. In a city of 8 million people, privacy was a myth, especially when Vought International owned the satellites, the cameras, and the very airwaves the signals traveled on. Deadpool was the most tracked man in the Western Hemisphere. He sat on the ledge legs dangling over a 50-story drop, unwrapping a chimichanga he'd stolen from a delivery bike 3 blocks over. It was lukewarm, soggy, and the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "We need to talk," a voice said behind him. Deadpool didn't look up. He took a bite of the chimichanga, chewing with deliberate slowness. Hard pass, he mumbled, mouth full of beans and cheese. "I'm processing trauma through Mexican food and self-destructive humor. Check back never." The cape fluttered. That distinct heavy sound of expensive fabric moving in a wind that shouldn't exist. Homelander landed on the ledge next to him. He didn't hover this time. He sat down. Just 2 guys sitting on a precipice, watching the city breathe below them. "I've been thinking about you," Homelander said. His voice was conversational, terrifyingly normal. The healing factor, the attitude, the complete inability to shut up. "You're interesting." Homelander continued, turning his head to study Wade's mask. "I don't find many people interesting." "That's because you're a narcissist who only finds yourself interesting," Deadpool retorted, swallowing the bite. "Exactly," Homelander laughed. It was a genuine sound, bright and chilling. "See, you get it. Everyone else pretends I'm normal, that I'm a hero, that I'm, what did you call it? A psychotic man-child with a god complex." "I stand by that assessment," Deadpool said, reaching for his soda. "So do I," Homelander agreed softly. "I am a god." He turned fully toward Deadpool. His eyes were blue, clear, and empty of anything resembling humanity. "And you," Homelander mused, "you're something I can't kill. That makes you either a threat or a toy. I haven't decided which." Deadpool looked at his half-eaten chimichanga. He looked at Homelander. He looked at the 50-story drop. "You're going to throw me off this building, aren't you?" "Oh, absolutely." Homelander grabbed him by the tactical harness and hurled him. He didn't just push him, he pitched him. Deadpool had approximately 4 seconds of freefall to appreciate the Manhattan skyline, the glittering lights, the grid of traffic, the massive Vought billboards before physics collected its debt. He hit a yellow taxi, stalled in gridlock. The impact sounded like a bomb going off inside a soda can. The roof of the cab crumpled inward, the windshield shattered into a million diamonds, and the frame bent until the chassis scraped the asphalt. Deadpool's skeleton shattered like dropped china. The taxi driver screamed. Pedestrians screamed. People whipped out phones because this was New York and content was king. Deadpool lay in the wreckage, his spine protruding through his stomach, his limbs twisted at angles that made anatomy textbooks weep. His healing factor roared to life, snapping bones back into place with wet, grinding noises that were louder than the sirens. Homelander descended gracefully, landing next to the crushed car. He ripped the door off its hinges and pulled Deadpool out by the scruff of his neck, dangling him like a wet cat. "I read your file," Homelander said, ignoring the chaos around him. "Well, the file Vought built on you. Regenerative healing factor, fourth wall awareness, whatever that means. Expert combatant, clinically insane." Deadpool groaned his jaw, resetting with a click. "You missed? Excellent dancer. But here's what interests me." Homelander continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're not from here. Different universe, you said, which means..." He launched upward again. Instant acceleration, 0 to 600 in a heartbeat. The air pressure change popped Deadpool's eardrums. "You have no attachments," Homelander shouted over the wind. "No family to threaten, no friends I can murder, nothing I can use for leverage." "You could try asking nicely," Deadpool yelled back, his skin flapping in the slipstream. "Where's the fun in that?" They breached the cloud layer. The city disappeared. The world became a sea of white below and infinite blue above. Cruising altitude, 30,000 feet. The temperature was 50 below zero. Deadpool's suit froze stiff. His breath crystallized in his lungs. Homelander held him at arm's length. "I'm going to conduct an experiment," Homelander said, his eyes glowing red. "See exactly how much damage you can take before the healing factor fails. For science." Homelander buddied Deadpool, chattered, his teeth clicking together like castanets. "I need you to understand something very important. Your approval-seeking behavior, your desperate need for love, that's trauma." Homelander's eyes narrowed. "You were raised in a lab by scientists who treated you like a product." Deadpool continued the oxygen starvation, making him bold or stupid or both. "That's not your fault. But the murders, the rape, the casual cruelty, that's choices. You're not a victim anymore. You're a victimizer. There's a difference." "I don't need therapy from a corpse," Homelander sneered. The heat vision hit. It wasn't a blast. It was a dissection. Homelander carved a line through Deadpool's chest cavity, burning through ribs, lungs, and heart. The smell of cauterized flesh was swallowed by the high-altitude wind. The healing factor fought back, regenerating tissue as fast as the lasers destroyed it, a stalemate of biology versus solar energy. "You know what's funny?" Homelander shouted over the sizzling meat. "Nobody talks to me like this. Everyone is too afraid or too smart. But you just keep talking. It's fascinating, like watching a cockroach lecture me about morality." "Cockroaches are very moral," Deadpool screamed, smoke pouring from his chest. "They have strong family values." Homelander dropped him. 30,000 feet. Deadpool had 90 seconds. 90 seconds to think about his life, to think about Vanessa, to think about the chimichanga he barely got to enjoy, to wonder if a healing factor worked on full-body pancaking. He screamed the whole way down, not in fear, well, mostly in fear, but also in sheer, unadulterated frustration. He hit the Hudson River. The water didn't yield. It hit him like a concrete slab. The impact pulverized him. Every bone, every organ. He was reduced to a sack of soup inside a red leather skin. He sank to the bottom, surrounded by silt and pollution. For a long minute there was nothing, no pain, no thought, just the dark. Then the knitting began, the agonizing, miraculous reconstruction of a human being from paste. He swam to shore 20 minutes later, dragging a body that was still 50% unset jello onto a rotting pier. He coughed up river water and blood. Homelander was waiting. He was sitting on a piling, looking like a bored gargoyle. "Round 3, Homelander offered. "Can we just talk like adults?" Deadpool wheezed, his vocal cords still reforming, without the repeated murder. No, Homelander smiled. "This is more fun." Leo Vance sat in the dark of the Vought server room. He wasn't supposed to be here. He had hacked the credentials of a senior admin to access the black box, the localized high-resolution surveillance net that Vought used to spy on its own assets. He was watching the feed from Times Square. It was 4 a.m. The city that never slept was quiet except for the screaming. For the last 6 hours, Leo had watched a snuff film. Homelander had dragged the red-suited man across the city. He had thrown him through abandoned factories. He had dragged him across asphalt at supersonic speeds until his legs were worn down to nubs, then waited for them to grow back. He had used him as a projectile to demolish a condemned tenement. It was methodical. It was creative. It was the work of a child pulling the wings off a fly. But the fly wouldn't die, so the child just kept pulling. And through it all, the audio feed picked up one thing. Jokes. Broken, gurgled, wheezing jokes. Deadpool kept talking. Leo watched horrified and mesmerized. The man in red refused to beg. He refused to scream for mercy. He refused to give Homelander the one thing he wanted: submission. "He's winning," Leo whispered to the bank of humming servers. "He's getting turned into hamburger meat, and he's winning." Times Square was bright as noon, lit by the massive digital billboards advertising Vought products. Homelander held Deadpool by the ankle, dangling him upside down over the empty street. A small crowd of late-night revelers and tourists had gathered phones out, filming the spectacle. They thought it was a movie shoot or a stunt. They cheered. "You're boring me," Homelander said. He sounded tired, frustrated. Usually people break by now. Psychologically, they beg, they cry. But you just keep making jokes. Coping mechanism. Deadpool swung like a pendulum, his face a mass of scar tissue and fresh blood. "Also, you're not as scary as you think. Thanos was scarier. The Beyonder was scarier. Hell, my ex-wife was scarier." "I could kill everyone down there," Homelander said, gesturing vaguely at the cheering tourists. "Right now, just to prove a point." "But you won't," Deadpool said. Homelander froze. "Excuse me." "You won't," Deadpool repeated. "Because you need them to love you. That's your weakness. Not kryptonite, not magic. Just a pathological need for approval from people you consider insects." Homelander's grip tightened. Deadpool's ankle bones ground together. "Say that again," Homelander whispered. "You're weak," Deadpool said. He wasn't joking now. His voice was steady, hard, and stripped of all irony. "Not physically. Physically, you're terrifying. But emotionally, you're a child throwing tantrums because mommy didn't hug you enough. And deep down, you know it. That's why you can't kill me. Because I see you. I really see you. And you can't manipulate or intimidate someone who's got your number." The heat vision fired, point blank, into the face. Deadpool's head vaporized. It was gone in a flash of red mist and steam. The body went limp in Homelander's grip. The crowd below gasped. Some cheered, thinking it was special effects. Others screamed, realizing it wasn't. Homelander stood there, breathing heavy, holding a headless corpse. He waited. Seconds ticked by. Then the steam began to clear. Bone grew from the cauterized stump of the neck. Muscle wove itself over the bone. Eyes formed, a mouth, a brain. It was grotesque. It was a biological rewind. Homelander watched with clinical fascination. "Incredible," he breathed. "Complete neural regeneration. You should be brain dead. Vegetative." Deadpool's mouth formed. The lips moved before they even had skin on them. "But you're back, baby," Deadpool announced, his voice raw but functional. "Did I miss anything? Did you cry? I bet you cried." Homelander released him. Deadpool hit the pavement hard. His legs were still setting, so he crumpled, but he pushed himself up onto his elbows. "I could do this forever," Homelander said, staring down at him. "Kill you, watch you heal. Kill you again. You'd be my perfect toy." or Deadpool countered, forcing himself to stand on shaky, newly formed legs. You could accept that you've met someone you can't control, can't kill, and can't impress. He took a step toward the floating god. And that terrifies you, Deadpool said, because it means you're not actually a god. You're just a really strong guy with laser eyes and deep-seated abandonment issues. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, Homelander's mask cracked wide open. Leo saw it on the high-def feed, a look of genuine naked hurt. Rage, confusion, and the terrifying realization that he was transparent. It was the face of a bully who had punched a kid, and the kid had just laughed. Then the corporate smile slammed back into place like a vault door. "This isn't over," Homelander promised. "It never is with you narcissists," Deadpool replied. Homelander flew away. A sonic boom shattered the silence of Times Square, rattling the windows of the Disney store. He fled. He ran away from the man he couldn't break. Deadpool stood alone in the center of the crossroads of the world. He was covered in blood slime and river water. His suit was a rag. He looked like something the garbage disposal rejected. He looked up at the camera, not the news cameras, the hidden surveillance camera, the one Leo was watching. He waved. Taxi Deadpool yelled at a passing cab. Leo Vance sat back in his chair in the server room. He was sweating. His heart was racing. Homelander was scared. The thought was so foreign, so impossible that Leo had to replay the footage to confirm it. Yes, there it was. Fear. Leo reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. He plugged it into the terminal. He started downloading the Times Square feed. The unedited raw feed. He wasn't just deleting things anymore. He was keeping receipts. Deadpool's phone buzzed as he sat on the curb waiting for extraction. "Butcher," he answered. "Where the fuck are you?" "Times Square," Deadpool said. "Homelander just used me as a stress ball for 6 hours. Christ, Butcher's voice crackled. "You alive?" "Define alive. Can you walk Eventually. Stay put. MM's coming to get you." Deadpool hung up. A group of tourists approached him cautiously. They held up phones. "Selfie?" a girl asked, looking at his regenerating face with morbid curiosity. "Sure," Deadpool sighed. "Why not?" He leaned in, threw up a peace sign with a hand that was missing 2 fingernails, and smiled beneath the mask. Somewhere in Vought Tower, Ashley was pulling out her hair. Stan Edgar was calculating profit margins, and Homelander was staring at his reflection, wondering why breaking Deadpool felt exactly like losing. The end game didn't arrive with a bang or a laser blast. It arrived with a courier in a cheap suit and a leather portfolio. 3 days after the Times Square incident, Vought International stopped trying to kill Wade Wilson and started trying to erase him. They hit the boys first, not with hit squads, but with algorithms. In the span of 12 minutes, every bank account connected to Billy Butcher Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and even Huey's dad was frozen. Safe houses were flagged for foreclosure. Fake IDs that had worked for years were suddenly burned in federal databases. Deadpool was sitting on a park bench in Battery Park, feeding pigeons with a bag of popcorn he hadn't paid for when Ashley Barrett found him. She didn't have a security detail. She looked like a woman walking to her own execution. Her blazer was buttoned wrong. Her eyes were rimmed with red. She held a thick envelope in hands that shook so violently the paper rattled like dry leaves. "Wade Wilson," she said. Her voice was thin, brittle. Deadpool tossed a kernel of popcorn at a particularly fat pigeon. Ashley, looking radiant. "Is that a new ulcer? It really brings out the panic in your eyes." "You're being sued," she said, thrusting the envelope at him, "by Vought International for property damage, assault on corporate assets, defamation, industrial espionage, and terrorism. Combined liability is $4 billion. Deadpool whistled. $4 billion. That's Dr. Evil money. Counterpoint. I'm from another dimension. I have no social security number, no credit score, and my legal identity is trust me, bro. Good luck collecting. We know, Ashley whispered. She pulled a strand of hair from her scalp. Snap. We know we can't collect from you, so we've frozen every account connected to your associates. The boys are bankrupt. Their operations are shut down. We've seized their assets. And unless you surrender for medical evaluation. She made air quotes, her fingers trembling. We'll press charges against everyone who has helped you, including the ones you haven't met yet. Deadpool stopped feeding the birds. The mirth drained out of his posture. He looked at the papers. It was a masterclass in legal strangulation. It was weaponized bureaucracy. This is good, he admitted. Evil but good. Hit me where I'm vulnerable, through other people. Very effective. I don't want to do this, Ashley said. Tears welled up, balanced on her lower lids. I don't, but it's my job. And if I don't, someone else will. And at least I'm... She stopped. She looked at the hair in her hand. At least I gave you warning. Appreciate it, Deadpool said softly. Question. Do you actually believe in what Vought does? Or are you just terrified of losing your job? Ashley laughed. It was a jagged, broken sound. Both neither I don't know anymore. She handed him a small, heavy card, cream-colored stock, embossed lettering. That's Stan Edgar's direct line. He wants to negotiate personally. She turned and walked away, heels clicking on the pavement, a cog in a machine that was grinding her down to dust. Deadpool looked at the card. Stan Edgar, CEO. Well, Deadpool said to the fat pigeon, time to meet the manager. Leo Vance was staring at a progress bar, uploading 89%. He was in the bathroom of the Vought content moderation floor again. He had locked himself in the handicap stall. His laptop was balanced on his knees, connected to the building's guest Wi-Fi through a VPN that bounced his signal through Estonia, Panama, and a server in his cousin's basement in Jersey. He wasn't uploading the videos to YouTube. Vought owned YouTube, or at least they owned the people who ran it. He was uploading the raw files, the unedited Times Square torture footage, the Nazi Stormfront audio, the Homelander flight path data, to a decentralized blockchain server, the kind used by whistleblowers and anarchists. Uploading 94%. Leo Janice's voice came from the hallway outside. You in there, we have a briefing on the Deadpool litigation strategy. Stomach bug, Leo called out. His voice shook. Bad burrito. 5 minutes, Leo. Edgar wants all hands on deck for narrative control. Footsteps retreated. Uploading 99%. Leo held his breath. Upload complete. Encryption key generated. He copied the key. He pasted it into an email draft addressed to Butcher, theboys.net, an address he found on the dark web forum where people plotted to kill Soups. He hit send. Then he flushed the toilet, wiped his sweating palms on his pants, and went out to help Vought lie to the world. The office on the 72nd floor of Vought Tower didn't smell like ozone or blood. It smelled of old money, rare wood, and the kind of silence that costs $1,000 a minute. Deadpool sat in a leather chair that was more comfortable than his entire apartment. Across the desk sat Stan Edgar. Edgar didn't stand. He didn't offer a hand. He sat with the stillness of a reptile wearing a suit that cost more than Deadpool's organs were worth on the black market. "Mr. Wilson," Edgar said. His voice was calm, devoid of the theatrical menace Homelander projected. This was real power, the power of a man who signed the checks that bought the gods. "Thank you for coming." "You sued my friends for $4 billion, Deadpool said, putting his feet up on the mahogany desk. Seemed rude not to respond. "Business, not personal," Edgar said, not even glancing at the boots scuffing his desk. "I need your cooperation. You need the lawsuit dropped. Let's negotiate." Behind Edgar, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan. The city looked small from up here, insignificant. "Here's my offer," Edgar said. "You submit to non-invasive medical testing. We study the healing factor, attempt replication. We pay you $10 million as a consulting fee. In exchange, we drop all charges, leave the boys alone, and you get to walk away wealthy." "Non-invasive testing," Deadpool repeated. "From the company that created Stormfront, covers up super crimes and creates super terrorists for profit margins. Pass." $20 million, Edgar countered instantly. "Not for sale." $30 million, and Homelander leaves you alone. Permanently. Deadpool paused. The money meant nothing. But the peace, the freedom from the constant hunting, the chance to leave this universe, find a way home to Vanessa and Blind Owl. He looked at Edgar. He saw a man who believed he could buy gravity if the price was right. "Here's my counteroffer," Deadpool said. He leaned forward, taking his feet off the desk. "I keep exposing your shit, every crime, every cover-up, every body you've buried. I'm unkillable, which means I've got time. And I've seen how this story ends for your company. Spoiler alert. It's bad." Edgar's expression didn't change. He didn't blink. "You're bluffing. You can't know our future." "I've seen the show," Deadpool said, tapping his mask. "The boys. You're in it. Vought falls eventually. Not today, not tomorrow, but inevitably. Because systems built on evil always collapse. It's just math." Edgar sipped his coffee. He looked bored. "Even if that were true, which it isn't, I won't be here to see it," Edgar said. "I'll have retired wealthy, powerful, and satisfied. Can you say the same?" "I'll be alive," Deadpool said, "and I'll be annoying." That's enough, Edgar decided. He pressed a button on his desk, a small, discreet buzzer. The double doors behind Deadpool opened. Homelander walked in. He wasn't flying. He wasn't posturing. He walked with the heavy, inevitable gait of an executioner. He was smiling, but his eyes were flat and dead. "Still not playing nice?" Homelander asked. "He's refusing cooperation," Edgar said, not looking up from his paperwork. "Which means we proceed to Phase 2. Homelander, you are authorized to use necessary force to bring Mr. Wilson to the medical wing." Homelander cracked his knuckles. The sound was like pistol shots in the quiet office. "Finally, I've been practicing new ways to kill him." "You can't kill me," Deadpool reminded him, standing up. "We've established this. It's becoming a bit of a repetitive gag, honestly." "No, Homelander," said, stepping closer, "but I can hurt you forever." He leaned, in his voice a low rumble. "Basement Sublevel 7 has a cell designed for soups we can't execute. Concrete, steel, no windows, no light. I'll visit daily. We'll see how your sanity holds up after a year of torture, or 10, or 100. The room went cold. This wasn't death. This was worse. This was the "I have no mouth and I must scream" scenario. Eternal darkness. with a side of laser eyes. Deadpool looked at Stan Edgar. The CEO was sipping his coffee, watching the scene with the mild interest of a man watching a nature documentary. "You'd imprison me indefinitely because I won't let you experiment on me?" Deadpool asked. "I'd imprison you indefinitely because you are a threat to corporate interests," Edgar corrected. "This isn't personal, Mr. Wilson. It's business." Deadpool tensed. His danger sense was screaming. He was trapped. 72 floors up. The strongest being on the planet blocking the door. The smartest man on the planet behind the desk. "Here's what's going to happen." Deadpool said, his voice dropping the humor. "I'm walking out. You're not stopping me. And every day I'm free. I'm going to be Vought's worst nightmare. Not because I'm powerful, but because I can't be silenced." Homelander, Edgar said simply. Homelander's eyes began to glow. The window exploded. It wasn't a crack. It was a catastrophic failure of structural glass. The entire pane 10 feet tall and thick enough to stop a sniper bullet shattered inward. Through the shower of diamond dust glass swung a figure on a zip line. Billy Butcher crashed into the room boots first, slamming into the heavy oak conference table. He was holding a machine gun in one hand and screaming something that sounded distinctly like cunt. "Thought you might need an exit," Butcher shouted over the wind howling into the office. Homelander roared, shielding his eyes from the glass. Gas Butcher yelled into his comms. Across the street, on the roof of the adjacent building, Huey Campbell squeezed the trigger of a modified grenade launcher. A canister sailed through the broken window, hissing as it landed at Homelander's feet. It erupted into a cloud of thick, opaque green smoke. Frenchie's special blend, zinc particles and pepper spray. It wouldn't hurt Homelander, but it blocked his X-ray vision and irritated his super senses. "Go," Butcher yelled, unhooking the zip-line harness. Deadpool didn't hesitate. He grabbed the line. "Thanks for the ride," Deadpool shouted. He looked back at Stan Edgar, who was calmly brushing glass off his suit jacket, unmoved. "Stan, we must do lunch. I'll bring the tacos." He jumped. The fall was 72 stories. Deadpool slid down the line, smoke billowing from his gloves. Butcher followed a second later, clipping on a secondary line. Homelander burst through the smoke, eyes burning red, flying out into the open air. He looked like a demon rising from hell. "Get them!" Edgar's voice came over the building's PA system, calm and commanded. Butcher and Deadpool hit the street level, moving. The zip line ended at the roof of a parking garage. They rolled, hit the concrete, and kept running. "Van now," Butcher screamed into his radio. Frenchie's van screeched around the corner side door, open. Was leaning out, laying down cover fire with an assault rifle, aiming not at Homelander, that was useless, but at the police cars swarming the block. They dove into the van. "Go, go, go," Deadpool yelled, tumbling over Kimiko. Frenchie floored it. The van peeled out tires, smoking, just as Homelander slammed into the pavement where they had been a second ago, cracking the street down to the subway lines. "Underground," Butcher ordered. "He can't track us in the tunnels if we use the zinc flares." Frenchie spun the wheel, sending the van crashing through a chain-link fence and into a service tunnel entrance. Darkness swallowed them. Behind them, Homelander's roar of frustration shook the foundations of the city. The silence in the van was heavy, broken only by the panting of 5 people who had just spit in the eye of God. "Why?" Deadpool asked, looking at Butcher. Butcher was lighting a cigarette, his hand steady. "You could have let them take me," Deadpool said. "Would have gotten the lawsuit dropped. Would have saved your money, your reputation." "We don't leave people behind," said from the front seat. He sounded exhausted. "Not when we can help it." Besides, Butcher added, exhaling a plume of smoke, "You're useful. Unkillable distraction who pisses off soupies. That's valuable." "So it was tactical," Deadpool said. "It was tactical," Butcher agreed. "And we don't leave people behind. Both things can be true." Huey opened his laptop. He had a notification, an email from an encrypted address. Subject: the black box, from Anonymous. Attachment key, .ext. Huey clicked it. His eyes went wide. "Butcher Huey," said his voice trembling. "You need to see this. Someone just sent us the raw feed. Everything. The torture, the confession, the flight logs." Deadpool leaned over. "Who sent it?" "I don't know," Huey said. "But whoever it is, they just gave us the nukes." Deadpool smiled beneath his mask. He thought of the guy in the Hawaiian shirt. He thought of the terrified employees at Vought. "Cracks in the foundation," Deadpool whispered. "I told you, it's just math." Back in the office, Stan Edgar watched the city through the shattered window. The wind whipped his tie. Ashley stood in the doorway, trembling. "Sir, Homelander he's destroying the parking garage. He's out of control." Edgar took a sip of his coffee. "He's not out of control, Ashley. He's scared." Edgar turned away from the window. "Prepare the lawyers, and get the science division on the line. If we can't capture Mr. Wilson, we'll simply have to make sure he has nothing left to fight for." Edgar's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. "Nice suit, Stan. Does it come in prison orange? DP." For the first time in 20 years, Stan Edgar frowned. The new safe house was in Jersey, in the basement of a closed textile factory that smelled of rust and dead rats. It was damp, cold, and perfect for hiding from satellite superhumans and the subpoena power of a $4 billion lawsuit. The boys collapsed into exhausted silence. The adrenaline crash hit them like a physical weight. Huey slumped against a support pillar, clutching the flash drive like a holy relic. Began the ritualistic cleaning of weapons, the click-clack of disassembly the only sound in the dark. Kimiko sat on a crate signing something to Frenchie that made him smile, a tired, grim smile. "She says you are either very brave or very stupid." Frenchie translated, handing Deadpool a slice of pizza that had been sitting on a radiator for 3 hours. Both Deadpool confirmed, taking a bite. "Definitely both. It's a delicate balance, like juggling chainsaws while riding a unicycle on a tightrope over a shark tank." "We keep fighting," Butcher said from the corner. He was pacing, the energy of the violence still humming under his skin. "We keep exposing, keep surviving. We got the raw feed now, the black box. We drip feed it, make them bleed slowly." Until when, Deadpool asked. "Until Vought falls, or until we die." "Whichever comes first," Butcher replied. Comforting, Deadpool noted. "It's not supposed to be comforting," said, sliding a bolt back into his rifle. "It's supposed to be honest." Deadpool looked at his new allies. Broken people, traumatized vigilantes fighting an unwinnable war against corporate gods. They knew the odds. They knew they would probably die in a gutter or a Vought black site. But they fought anyway, not because they were heroes in the shining, cape-wearing sense, but because someone had to be the janitors of this messy universe. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. The room went silent. Everyone froze. They were underground, shielded off the grid. A call shouldn't be possible. Deadpool answered, "Mr. Wilson." Stan Edgar's voice was calm as death. No static, no anger, just the smooth, polished tone of a man who owned the signal towers. "Stan," Deadpool chirped. I hope you're calling to apologize about the window. That was vintage glass, hard to replace. You've made your choice, Edgar said, ignoring the banter. Vought respects that, but understand. We play the long game. Years, decades. Eventually, everyone breaks. Everyone compromises. We'll be here when you do. And I'll be here to piss you off when you try, Deadpool countered. I look forward to it, Edgar said. And for a second it sounded like he meant it. Professional respect, Mr. Wilson. You're more competent than most who have challenged us. The line went dead. Deadpool stared at the phone. He's good. Evil, but good. I hate him. Leo Vance stood on the platform of the Port Authority bus terminal. He had shaved his head. He was wearing clothes he bought at a thrift store with cash. His Vought ID badge was currently melting in a trash can fire in Hell's Kitchen. He checked his burner phone. The first file from the black box leak was live. Homelander, the Times Square tapes. It had 10 million views in an hour. Leo watched the comments roll in. Fake, deep fake, Vought lies. Is this real? He looks scared. It wasn't a death blow. Leo knew that. Vought would spin it. They would claim it was AI generated. They would hire experts to debunk it. They would distract the world with a new movie trailer or a celebrity scandal. But the seed was planted. Leo had spent his life building the wall of silence that protected the soups. Today he had taken a sledgehammer to the foundation. He tossed the burner phone into a garbage bin. He picked up his duffel bag. He didn't know where he was going. Maybe Montana, maybe Canada, somewhere without billboards. He was terrified. His hands were shaking. He would be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life. But for the first time in 3 years, the knot of anxiety in his chest was gone. He wasn't safe, but he was clean. He boarded the bus and didn't look back. In the Jersey basement, the mood had shifted. It wasn't celebratory. It was the grim satisfaction of soldiers who had survived the first wave. So Deadpool said, wiping pizza sauce off his mask, "What's the plan for tomorrow? Brunch or more terrorism?" "We hit the V distribution hubs," Butcher said, pointing to the map on the wall. "Then we leak the audio of the deep crying about his gills. Then we find out where Edgar sleeps." Deadpool nodded. He leaned back against the cold concrete wall. He had entered this universe expecting a cameo, a quick joke, a violent romp through a dark satire. He had found something else. He looked at Huey typing furiously on his laptop to decrypt the next file. He looked at MM checking the perimeter. He looked at Butcher eyes burning with a hate that could power a city. In his universe, heroes fought to save the world. In this universe, heroes fought to punish it for being wrong. Deadpool realized his healing factor made him the perfect weapon for this war. Vought's power came from control of the narrative control of fear control of consequences. Deadpool was uncontrollable. He was a variable they couldn't solve, a cancer they couldn't cut out. "I've been in worse situations," Deadpool lied to the room. Bollocks Butcher said, smiling, "Complete bollocks." "Okay, maybe not worse," Deadpool admitted, "but definitely less smelly. Seriously, Frenchie, what is that smell? Is it cheese? Is it distinct French cheese?" "It is napalm and garlic," Frenchie replied proudly. Deadpool laughed. Somewhere in Vought Tower, Homelander was staring at security footage of Deadpool obsession growing like a tumor in his mind. Ashley was likely bald by now. Stan Edgar was calculating profit margins on the apocalypse. The war wasn't over. It had barely started. Some things couldn't be fixed. You couldn't unburn a kid. You couldn't bring back the dead. You couldn't make a corporation grow a conscience. But you could make them bleed. Deadpool checked his katanas, sharp. He checked his healing factor, ready. He checked his mouth, still running. "Let's go make some trouble," Wade Wilson said. And somewhere in the distance the Vought signal flickered, just once. But it was enough.